Hi, thanks for joining us on the West London Sport YouTube channel. I'm here with my West London Sport colleagues Ben Kosky and Ian McCullough to chat a bit about QPR. Guys, obviously a poor result, the first in a long time actually. Obviously their side have been on a great run recently, beaten 2-1 by Birmingham after a couple of late goals. Interesting to see, obviously, Mark Warburton rotating the squad slightly. I'm not sure when the last time he actually made any changes was, but I think it's been a few games. It largely stuck with the same team, which had obviously been a big reason behind the winning run and the unbeaten run that they'd been on. But he decided to put in Nico Hammerline, Chris Willock, saw Macaulay Bonne as well, getting ahead of Lyndon Dykes. But the interesting one for me was leaving Ilias Chair on the bench and then obviously not even bringing him on at all to play in the game. I think it's been over 12 months since that last happened. I think it's 44 consecutive games that he's actually played in for QPR. So he's been like a mainstay in Mark Warburton's teams that he's played. I mean, I think for me, he kind of goes under the radar slightly because of the, I guess, lack of goals and assists that he gets. I think he probably should score more and I think he probably should assist more. And you could probably say, well, obviously the latter, you're dependent on a teammate to put the ball in the back of the net. And for a lot of the season, he's not had the strikers to maybe put the ball in the back of the net for his passes. But I mean, Ian, you were at the game. What do you think? Can they afford to drop Ilias Chair, or did Chris Willock deserve a go?
Oh, I think Warburton said on Friday in his press conference that he was going to make changes, and if you were going to leave him out, Ilias Chair, this was the game to do it. The pitch was horrendous. It was the first half. Honestly, it was like an Ishman League game in many ways. The pitch, normally you see it, at pro level, pitches are watered before the game. The sprinklers come on at half time. There was no watering before the game, no watering at half time, and the sun came out, and so what was already a kind of, a heavy pitch then dried out, and so it became a really bobbly, bouncy surface, and you're seeing good players not being able to get the ball under control. So it really wasn't a game for a player like Chair. And you just saw Birmingham's tactic in the first half was Rangers were playing into a kind of a low-lying sun, and they were just humping the ball into the box, and Rangers defenders were struggling to actually see it. It really was almost like Sunday morning stuff in many ways, just balls into the box and defenders trying to putting their hands over their eyes like that to try and get their heads to it. But it really was a poor game. It was a poor game. And really, the only moment of quality in the first half was the goal that Charlie Austin scored. It was a smart move and a good finish. And really, Johansson has to score that goes in. They win the game 2-0. It's done. Birmingham offered nothing. They really didn't. And it was Rangers were sitting quite comfortably, looking like they're going to get the win. And then 2 late goals, let them down. But I don't think it was anything to do with, they didn't lose the game because Chair didn't start. They didn't lose the game because Charlie Austin went off. They didn't lose the game because, the changes he made. It just was one of those days where they didn't defend the box properly in the last 10 minutes. Probably a bit of a poor decision to allow them to get a throw that led to the goal, because there was a foul on Todd Kane that led to the throw in. And you just have to say it's one of them. Out of all the matches they had in February, the one you looked at that they probably win was Birmingham away, and it turns out it was the only one they lost. So you kind of look at it in that respect. It's been a pretty good month for them, and you have to move on. I felt a bit sorry for Willock. He deserved to start the game, but on that surface and the type of game it really wasn't his kind of game. And when he did get the ball at his feet, he set that chance up for Johansson. But yeah, I don't really think it was. Just one of those, put behind you, move on to the next one.
Yeah, definitely. I get the stuff about the pitch, because obviously Chair is a player that needs the ball at his feet. And to be fair to QPR, that the pitch always looks good at Loftus Road or Kind Prince Foundation Stadium. It always looks really in good condition. And I think that's probably a big part of what they want to do, is to get the ball down and play. And we've seen Chair do that a lot this season. But I just feel like his role maybe goes a little bit under the radar and is a little bit underappreciated in the system they were playing and the system they are still playing during that good run, because he's essentially the guy that links that midfield too, of Ball and Johansson and then the strikers, and he really does get the ball into good areas, and maybe his end product isn't always there, and like we said, he probably should score more goals, but I just feel like maybe his importance to the team goes under the radar a little bit. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Ben? Were you pretty surprised not to see him in the team even come on at all?
I was definitely surprised that he didn't come on. Not surprised that he didn't start, because I actually thought in the previous match at Preston, it looked to me like Preston had worked him out. Basically, they stifled him quite well, and I felt, to be honest, like some of the other players, he was looking a bit tired, and that's understandable with the number of games. I mean, you said, Dan, he's played how many was it? 40 odd.
I think it's 44. Yeah, that was a stat.
Yeah, so.
After, yeah.
So really, in that sense, it's not surprising. And I think the other factor, as Ian's already said, was that Willett deserved to get a start. I mean, we were talking, I think, last time about how do you get him into the starting lineup, and that's probably the most obvious way, is to replace Chair with Willett coming in. So I don't think it was that surprising a change, and possibly not having Chair come on. I suppose you look at the match situation with 75 minutes or 75 minutes to go, and as Ian said, Rangers are looking comfortable, probably a bit like the Brentford game in reverse. If you look at that from a Brentford point of view, they would have said the same thing after 70 minutes. We're looking quite comfortable just to see out a 1-0 win here. And then it all turned around with two.
I think Bournemouth,
goals.
To be fair, like the Bournemouth game was, they looked. I mean, they had some big chances in the first half, and like you say, it's almost like the reverse of those games, isn't it? QPR have been done by what they've been doing to other teams recently.
Yeah, I think you can definitely look at it that way, and so anyway, no, I don't think the team selection was a surprise. I would be surprised if Chair doesn't come back into the side against Barnsley, as we said. But the whole situation with picking the same side has been very interesting. I mean, you look back earlier in the season, Mark Warburton, along with a lot of managers, made a great deal of the packed schedule about how many games the players were having to play. And it's quite interesting that suddenly we come into this post-New Year period and Rangers have made hardly any changes at all. And I do hope that will be something that people remember when the FA Cup comes around again next year, and we hear all the nonsense again about how you've got to rotate and you've got to rest players, because clearly some of them are capable of playing twice a week for a number of weeks on end. But yeah, I think this was probably the time where you needed to change it, and I would expect to see it changed a bit again when we come to play Barnsley.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's fair enough, really, isn't it? Like, we can all sit here and say this person should play, this person should play. But at the end of the day, he knows his players and he knows how healthy they are and how fit they are at that point in time. And like we said, he played so many games in a row that maybe that does suggest he did need a rest, and he's obviously been given one. And I think, he said after the game against Bournemouth as well, he got asked about whether rotation would become a thing, because obviously he'd played the same team so many games in a row. And he did say that, the schedule means that we are going to have to rotate. So it's understandable that he did want to freshen things up. Obviously not the desired effect that he'd hoped for, even though it wasn't necessarily a bad performance. It was just 2 quick goals that undone them. But Ian, you touched on there, obviously, Chair going out meant Chris Willock came into the team. We've spoken on here before about how well he's done off the bench, and maybe that he does deserve a start. I mean, what did you make of his performance? I suppose, like Ben touched on there, the only way you're really going to get him into the system is in that position, unless you want to play him as like a second striker, because he's probably not going to play as a wing back. I know he's played centre midfield before, but that's not really his role. But you want to try and get him into those attacking areas. And what did you think of him? Has he done enough to keep his place in the team?
It'll be tough to judge him on that game, just because the way the game panned out. It was very ping pong, aerial tennis, the ball bouncing between the centre circle and the edge of the penalty box. But much of it, he was feeding off scraps, as all the strikers. I like him off the bench. He gives you something different. I think as a team, you're only as strong as your bench. I think Chair should come back in, and I think he likes him off the bench. Warburton, he has said that he likes to bring him on when defenders are tiring, and bring him on for, the last half hour, 35 minutes, just to kind of, run at players. And he did okay. He didn't. As I say, it wasn't really a game for him, and he took him off for Field, I think, who came on, and again, he really impressed me. Field, I think looks a good signing, and he certainly should be knocking on the door for a start.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, good to see him get his go in the starting 11. I think he did deserve it, Willock, for his performances off the bench. And if he hadn't have started, or he didn't start in the next few games, I think he would have been quite rightly felt a bit unjustified. Ben, you spoke about it just a minute ago there. I mean, you expect to see Chair go back into the starting 11 against when they play Barnsley. Do you think he should go back to the team that was doing so well, or what do you think? Do you think he should keep freshening things up, keep changing it, or would you like to see him go back to that consistent team that had done so well for those run of games?
I mean, to be honest with you, Dan, I'd go back to something that Mike Brearley, the England cricket captain many years ago, wrote, and he's also a eminent psychologist, and he wrote that the idea that you should never change a winning team is rubbish. And he said, conversely, just because a team lost, that doesn't mean you should necessarily change it either. So I would say that I don't think the team selection should be influenced by the result at Birmingham. I think, as Ian said, it was a difficult game because of the conditions and the pitch, and and various factors, and we shouldn't perhaps read too much into it. So I think you just approach it in terms of picking the best side you can, whatever you think that is. At the same time, I think there are a number of fringe players, if you like, who we would like to see get a run out, and Ian's mentioned Sam Field, who has certainly looked good in the patches he's come on, and I think similarly, of course, and we've been asking this for several weeks. Where's Geordie Device? He's played a bit
missing.
Yeah, it's not quite where's Wally, it's where's Geordie, I think, he's obviously been working his way back to fitness, but I think at some stage we've got to get a good look at him, because as with Field, the idea is that he's come in with a view to a permanent move in the summer, and you can't really judge someone if you haven't seen very much of them in the first team. So I think we have to see him getting some football. Maybe that's to start, but equally, do you feel that defence has done a good job for all but a few minutes of the last game? So it's a tough one, but I think I would certainly like to see Device involved, even if it's just coming on off the bench. And Sam Field, certainly, one I would like to see more of as well. But I would say, don't make changes for the sake of it, just because the team lost at Birmingham, because that doesn't mean they're on the wrong track necessarily.
Yeah, what do you think about it, Ian? I mean, obviously some of the rotation stuff does come down to fitness and players needing rests, which is understandable, and it's obviously not based on performances. But if he can go back to the team that was doing so well previously before the Birmingham game, do you think he should do it?
I think you have to go, if you're going to make changes, you go like for like. So if you want to give Don Ball a rest, for example, you bring Field in to start, or you want to, rest your Hansen, etc. I think Lee Wallace will come back in. He's done very well. I think it's probably right to rest him at the weekend, although the guy who replaced him didn't cover himself in any glory whatsoever. And then the forwards, I mean, Bond, he obviously he started Bond at the weekend, he said, because he felt he had the pace to get in behind Birmingham's, back four. It didn't really pay off. So we might see Dykes back. I don't know. But he's very driven by data, Warburton, and I think they've invested quite heavily in the sports science side of things at QPR, and they're very kind of and you have to say it kind of has worked, because they've been, touching wood here now, but they've been very fortunate really of injuries this year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Amos one,
they've been kind of ligament injuries. They haven't been soft tissue injuries. You're not seeing players out with hamstring pulls or tight calves, so that's really where they are. And if you're going to pull a fella off after 55 minutes in case he pulls a groin in the 75th minute and you're out for 6 weeks, it kind of makes sense to do it. But obviously when you lose the game, people will turn and say, well, why do you take him off? But you can't win really. But
it's a tricky balance, because I remember when Bright was doing really well, I think last season, and he'd bring him off with like half an hour left, and the fans would be getting on his back. I think there was like boos once when he brought Bright off. People like weren't happy at all. But then after the game, he was like, "Well, I have to bring him off because obviously he looks at the data and he's like, if he plays this amount, he's more likely to get this injury." And so yeah, it's all like mathematical, and you can understand that. But yeah, Ian, something you said there kind of brings me on to my next point. Something you touched on. I think there's been, I guess, like bubbling under the surface a little bit because the team's been doing so well that maybe it's not got the attention it deserves. But he swapped Lyndon Dykes for Macaulay Bonne. Another game without a goal for Bonne. That's 7 without him. Obviously, Dykes came late on. Dyke hasn't scored for 17 games now, which is really, really worrying. Like you said, Austin's come in and scored the goals and the team's been doing really well. So it's not been like a massive problem because essentially they have got someone scoring the goals. But I mean, Ben, how big a concern is this for the future? Because Austin's only on loan until the end of the season, and it just seems like neither Macaulay Bonne or Lyndon Dykes can get a goal. I mean, Bonne gets in the position sometimes, and he's missing big chances, and Dykes obviously missed a couple of big chances at Preston. But it's just between them, the two big striker signings in the summer, they just can't seem to score a goal.
Well, you're right, Dan. I mean, that's got to be a concern. I mean, I think if you look at Macaulay Bonne, you'd actually say, off the top of my head, I can't remember him having a run of starts. No. He's had the odd start here or there, and I feel perhaps now is the time. Perhaps he needs to just have a run of games starting and see how he does. Because if I'm honest, I think from what I've seen, he offers a bit more than Dykes, just in terms of his movement and the positions he gets into. And at the moment, that hasn't really been backed up by goals. I mean, the goals he has scored have always been late goals, you know, to either sort of pick up a point or pick up a win. So they've tended to be crucial goals, but he obviously does need to find more and get into a rhythm. And then, as you say, it has been bubbling under the problem of what do you do with Lyndon Dykes.
So if they hit a bad run again, I think it will really come to the surface, and I think those two will get singled out as being a part of the problem because, you know, Austin can score as many goals as he likes, but he can't be the only one.
No, absolutely. And I mean, Dykes, I think, you know, I was actually slightly encouraged by that game at Preston because I felt at least he's actually getting into scoring positions, which he hadn't really been doing. And I think, you know, one of those he should have done better. I think the other he probably did as well as he could, and the keeper made a good save. But nevertheless, you know, it doesn't take a genius to work out he's short on confidence. It shows. And where you go with that, I think, is hard to say. I mean, there's nothing really you can do for the rest of this season. Possibly next year, you have to look at, can we send him out on loan? Maybe just get him back to basics, get him to rediscover his touch, which he obviously did have when he came to QPR. Let's not forget that. I mean, he came in, and I think everyone was impressed by certainly his first couple of games. He was putting himself about well. He looked like a really good addition, and somehow it's just not really, it's not really followed on from there. So I don't think we can give up on him, certainly, because when you've paid a sizable chunk of money for a player, you can't just give up on them. You've got to work on it and see what can be done. But for me, at the moment, you try and give Bonne a run of starts, see how he does, see if he can strike up a good partnership with Austin, and maybe get himself on the score sheet and then go from there, basically.
I was having a conversation on Twitter after the Preston game as well. Someone else pointed out that was, like you say, Ben, that was the kind of first time that we'd seen Lyndon Dykes really get into goal scoring positions. Like, I can't really remember him having like too many shots. I mean, it's weird, isn't it? And I remember, Ian, obviously we saw Macaulay Bonne miss that absolute sitter against Bournemouth, and we sort of turned to each other and were just at a loss to how we'd managed to miss that. I mean, how concerned are you about this second striker difficulty that they're having alongside someone like Charlie Austin, who is clearly a very talented Championship, maybe still even a Premier League striker?
I think with Bonnet is confidence. I think I heard an interview with Charlie Austin where he said that one day Bonne rang him in the car saying, have you ever been in a situation where you just can't score? What do you do? What do I need to do? So I think if the manager says you're going to play the next 5 games, I think that will give him a little bit of, right, okay, it's almost like he's trying too hard, I think, Bon. If he knows he's going to start and get a little run of games, that might help him. I will say with Dykes, I find it's really interesting. The subs were warming up. The starters had gone in to get changed for the start of the match, and the subs are out on the pitch, and they were doing shooting practice, where it was just a basic kind of passing to the coach, receiving the ball back and shooting on goal. And Dykes was 10 out of 10. bottom corner.
Yeah.
And Joe Longley was in the goal. And the others were over the bar, hitting the post. So he's obviously got, I know it's not a match, but he's obviously got an ability there. And they must be seeing that in training to say, well, we know he can do it. And I think he just needs one and he'll be away. We keep saying that, but maybe as a plan B off the bench, have him as your plan B off the bench, something different. If you are chasing the game, crosses into the box, I think once he gets one, because there are a few people whose opinion I respect have said, yeah, he will come good. He is, there is a player in there, but maybe next season, but yeah, I'm agree with Ben, you can't give up on him. The money you pay for him, you've got to, give him it's a weird season as well. New move down south, family settling, all that kind of stuff that goes on. We don't know, but yeah, he certainly needs a goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Warburton's kind of brushed off those concerns, hasn't he? I mean, you raised them in the press conference as well yourself, Ian, about lack of confidence, and he sort of said, "Oh, well, it's I'm pleased with their overall game. I'm pleased they're getting into the position. So let's hope they do come good." Obviously, some sad news over the weekend about former QPR captain Glenn Roeder passing away. Captain QPR. I mean, I'm sure you guys have got fond memories of playing for QPR, and Ben, I know you had a lot to do with him while you were covering West Ham as well. I was wondering if you could share some of your thoughts about him and who he was.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah. When I was working on local papers in East London, and Glenn was at that time just become the manager of West Ham, so I did deal with him on a very regular basis. And I have to say, things that other people have said. Really, he was just a very gentlemanly kind of person. He was very courteous, very honest. And I really appreciated the fact that he would always make time to talk to me, even when he had tons on his plate, which he very often did. And you never felt he was trying to sort of lead you in the wrong direction. If he could tell you things, he would. And there was a certain element of trust as well. So he really was, for me, an ideal bloke to work with. He knew I was a QPR fan. In fact, I remember when whoever it was first introduced me to Glenn, and he said Ben's a QPR fan, and Glenn said, "Oh, that must be why he's losing his hair already," which I was even back then. He had very fond memories of playing at QPR, and what was particularly nice was most of his coaching staff also had QPR connections. Paul Goddard was his number 2. Roger Cross was on the coaching staff. Ludek McCullough was the goalkeeping coach who'd just finished playing for QPR. So there was a very nice sort of atmosphere in that regard. And Glenn really, I think, often was someone that perhaps the media at large didn't see the best side of him, but he really was absolutely brilliant to deal with, and someone I had a lot of respect for.
Yeah, and obviously gave a lot himself as a player for QPR as well, Ian.
Yeah, he was obviously the captain of the 1982 FA Cup team. The first QPR team I remember going to watch, he was the skipper, and he very much ahead of his time as a footballer. Really, he was, the archetypal ball-playing centre half that is lauded now, like John Stones is and Rio Ferdinand was. But he was a very different player to that. It's unheard of for a centre back to be bringing the ball out of the defence and turning up on the left wing and setting up attacks. That's the kind of player he was. Class act as a footballer. The Roeder shuffle. He was remembered for down at that Loftus Road for bringing the ball out and a step over to play past the man and bring midfielders into space. Really, really class act of a player. And as Ben's already alluded to, he's a very class act as a man, and a very sad loss. Very well regarded in Newcastle as well, where he left. I mean, he left QPR. Funny enough, it shows how times have changed. He had to leave QPR because he wasn't getting the game because of the emergence of Warren Neal, Terry Fenwick, and Alan McDonald. That's why he left, and helped Rangers get promoted to the first division and played one game and then was sold to Newcastle because he couldn't get in the side. So, but I only met him once or twice, and as Ben said, he's very fondly remembers his time at QPR, and very, very sad news yesterday.
Absolutely. Quickly then, guys, predictions for the game against Barnsley. We'll start with you, Ben.
Yeah, I'm going to be the doom and gloom man here. I think Barnsley are going to win this. They're a very decent side, well organised. They've got Moat, who's got great delivery from set pieces. Woodrow, I think, is a very useful striker. And yeah, I could see them winning it 2-1.
Ian?
Yeah, I don't think they'll win, but I think I agree. Barnsley are a good side. They've beaten Rangers comfortably the last 3 times they played them, which is unheard of, really. Rangers have got a pretty good record against Barnsley. I'm going to go for Rangers to nick this, actually. I reckon they might nick it 1-0.
Confident. I'm going to say, I'll go differently. I'm going to say 1-1. I think a draw would be fair as well. I think it'd be important not to lose it off the back of the Birmingham game. If they can get back to some sort of decent form, don't want to go on a losing run. I think that's really important. Yeah. Brilliant. If you enjoyed watching this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you again soon.